You know how long I've been waiting for this? Woo, I'm about to make a name for myself here.
I don't think you guys walk away from this.
You just make sure people know what happened here today. And when you get out of here, you
I don't think Silver Surfer. Oh, hi. Welcome back, true believers, to another episode. You caught me off guard again. Welcome back to another episode of Comic Conversations. I'm just catching up on the exploits of Silver Surfer. I haven't read that one. It's actually pretty good. It's got Drax in it, so Drax the Destroyer. Pretty cool. Anyway, it's another episode of Comic Conversations, and without any further ado, I'm gonna bring on our guest tonight. He's an artist. He's I think he's probably one of the best artists in the comic book YouTube community that I know, at least, and very talented. He does a lot of work for different companies, but we'll let him talk about that. All the way from the Great White North, it's my friend and your friend, Lock Wynn.
Hi, everybody.
How you doing, man?
Doing good. Doing good. It's hot. Let's put it this way. It's hot.
Oh, yeah. It was like 90 degrees here today.
That's about the same up here. Yeah. It's just nuts, right? I got the AC on 24/7 now. Right?
Yeah. Well, I got my fan right here. You can't see it. But sometimes you can see my hair blowing.
Right. Yeah, you got to do that.
Yeah. Let's see how long in the chat here. We had we had a few people earlier.
Yeah.
Chiming in here like at 11:30 p.m. Was this last night?
Yeah.
Derek Neiman says, Matt and Locke.
Hey.
And we got Nerdy Geek says, have a great show, buddy. I'm going to miss it. Superman starts in 28 minutes. We'll enjoy the show. And I don't want to hear any spoilers, okay? I don't want to hear any spoilers. And we got Adamantium Blade Comic Collectibles. That's Big Jeff. Looking forward to this one. I'm a Locke fan.
Thanks.
And we got Jean Malo,
Jean?
my French Canadian friend.
That's
Good morning. Good evening, everyone. So I'm going to sit outside and enjoy the very small breeze. I'll be on my phone, though. All right. Then we got Cyclotronic Squirt Gun. Greetings, Matt and everyone. Greetings. And that's right. No spoilers. This is I haven't seen it, so I'm not going to give you a spoiler. But I will tell you this. Come to find out, did you know this Superman is from another planet? Oh, no. And for some reason, Lex Luthor doesn't like him.
Oh.
I don't know. Okay, well, I'd like to thank you for coming on, man. It's we used to do like just the informal. I was trying to do this like inside the actor studio thing, but after last week, I'm not going to do that anymore.
Okay.
I was doing that whole list, we're like, what's your favorite sound?
Right.
But let's just not do that, I guess. We're just going to talk. Hey, Jay Thompson.
Hey, Jay.
How's everything in Iowa, Jay? Hope you're doing good. Okay. So we'll start out. I just start out with a couple of basic questions. We'll see where it goes. Because I have two different. This is like a two-part question.
Okay.
Kinda. Like, what is your origin story to getting into comic books? And I guess the second part would be, when did you want to start drawing comic book characters, and what inspired you to be an artist? So it's kind of a two-part.
Okay. Well, see, my background is Vietnamese, so I was born basically in 1971 wartime in Vietnam-ish, Laos, Thailand, that area. So my parents were refugees from their own country. So my grandparents are from like literally the middle of Vietnam, called Hue. You've heard of it before. It's literally the middle. This is where they bomb the crap out of everybody, right? The Viet Cong was trying to go south. America's trying to block it. So they're just like, it's just.
There's a very ancient city. That's where they had
it was the original. It was the original capital of Vietnam before it became like Ho Chi Minh and then Saigon, and then vice versa. So those things usually switch back and forth. So that is my background. I kind of, so a lot of like my, let's say family relatives were either killed or spread out around the world. So I have family in Australia, I have family in Europe, I have family in literally North America, South America, because they
Yeah.
were either boat people or, that's really what it was. So I came to Canada in 1978, 79, around that time. I was like 6 or 7 years old. So it really didn't affect me. It was kind of more like uprooted. I was young, dropped in, a foreign country, and I grew up north of Toronto. Right, so Toronto was back then it was like 1978, like maybe 2 million population.
Yeah.
It wasn't that big. Then I literally grew up in a farm north of an hour away, right? And this is like you got the street corner with the variety store, gas station, right? That is pretty much it, right? I like the it was a Catholic school house. It was literally a house. You know what I mean? Like, we had nuns and priests as so I kind of grew up like one of the boys. I grew up playing hockey, rugby, and all that stuff. But what got me into comic was the local variety store. When comics back then, you would buy everything on a spinner rack, right? And it would come in a bag, right? It was a poly bag, and it was like random, like 4 or 5 books in there, and it was like 50 cents or something stupid.
Hmm.
Because I remember, like, you would get $1, and you would go in, buy your comic in a bag. You get your pack of hockey cards, right? And your pack of Garbage Pail Kids, and it was a buck. You know what I mean? Like you
Yeah.
walk,
Yeah.
that was my entertainment for the entire week. The hockey card was like the what do you call it? It would be something. It would be like a Gretzky rookie card. It was like, what do we do with this? You put it on our BMX and make that noise, right? So those kind of things, and the Garbage Pail Kids with the stickers, and the gum that you just break your teeth. Right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
comics was one of those things that got me into reading, believe it or not, right? It was one of those things where, I didn't know this thing existed. But the poly bag, you open the poly bag and you find like, oh, what are these, right? You get the odd mix of books, right? Then eventually, when I got old enough, I was like, the city grew and there would be other variety store. Then, you catch me trying to, if I pick up a Daredevil, like 72 or something, right? I want to read the next issue, and I would somebody would distract the retail guy, and we would try to peel the poly bag to look for the red Daredevil logo. You can't see inside; it just says comics, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's how I got into collecting. Eventually, it got to a point where the city was big enough when I think Honda Manufacturing moved in, and the city blew up, and then there would be a comic book store, right? Other than that, I think the only other way I got into comics was the library, right? Like the summertime was we didn't have video games, we didn't have that. We was library or down at the waterfront, downtown, doing whatever we were doing, right? Getting in trouble, our BMX and stuff like that, wandering around till like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, or something until our parents gets home.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some of the stuff I do is like, oh my god, how the hell did I survive that?
I get that. I'll think that all the time.
Right? But yeah, that's how I got into the comic book kind of stuff. I just start falling in love with the drawings, and I would take out my line paper, put it on top, and start tracing. Right? It got to a point where I was got really good. Then the comic book store were bringing these things called Dungeons and Dragon. I was like 15, 14 around that time, right? This is 80 something, 85, 84 around there, right? I got into Dungeons and Dragon, and to make extra money was literally to buy the game book was I'd bring my drawing pad, right? And I would sketch the characters of my friends, right? They were elves, wizards, whatever they roll, right? With swords and all this other stuff. And I would make like a couple bucks here and there. And that was just enough to feed me for like more comics,
Yeah.
right? That's how I got rolled into it. Then eventually, like the LCS owner, he was the one that says, "Hey, you can draw, right? Let me show you how a script is written. You know, we'll submit some of this stuff to Comic-Con." Then one year he took me to Toronto. We went on the which I drove down to Comic-Con. For us back then was at the Hilton Hotel. You know, you know the hotel, and it would be the hotel lobby, and there would just be guys in long boxes, people, you know what I mean? They'll bring in a couple artists, and I saw this old guy sitting there, right? And it was Stan Lee, right? I showed him some of the stuff. He goes, "Yeah, you need to, you know, work on this, work on that," and that's how I fell in love with the stories, right? So yeah, that's really what it was, and I kind of got hooked. I was drawing as much as I can, right, for the longest time, because I thought I wanted to. By the time I graduated school, I wanted to go to art college, right? And the thing with that was being an immigrant kid, the oldest one of the family. Like you either become a doctor, a lawyer, right? And I was pretty good at drawing, and I was pretty good in shop class and stuff. And because my dad was in construction, right, I was supposed to be an architect, right? And I literally went to the school back then was called the University of Ryerson, no, College of Ryerson, and I was going to be an architect. I went in 6 months. You know, you first year is always the boring. You're just reading, right? And I wanted to draw, and I just couldn't stand it. So I dropped out. Didn't tell my mom and dad.
Uh-oh.
There was an art college down the street. It was called the Ontario College of Art. I enrolled, and I literally got in no problem because I had sketchbooks, tons and tons of drawings of, like, when I'm sitting on the subway going to school or the bus or whatever, I was just drawing people. And they saw that. And also I was drawing superheroes and learning anatomy. You know, I had these books, the Bridget Anatomy books and all this stuff. I was just drawing everything I can possibly draw. And I got in, and I was doing like traditional art paintings. You know what I mean? Like learning to paint, learning to sketch, learning to all that stuff until my parents found out. They yanked my butt out of there after another like almost 6 months of like a year, you know what I mean? And they were like, "You're not like the whole." They said, "We're not paying for helping you go to school to become a an artist," because it wasn't like computer science or anything like that. It was art, right? You're learning to paint, you're learning to draw, you're learning color theory, you're doing all the fun stuff that I like doing. That is what I fell in love with. Then I ended up working with my dad for the whole summer while they're yelling at me. You're not going anywhere. You're blah, blah, blah. You know, you can't be an artist and stuff. You could have been a architect. And that was the whole case. And eventually I was like, I got to do something, right? And because I was Asian, you know, I have a great math background to get into architecture. So I saw a commercial for DeVry. I don't know, it's a technical school at the time.
Yeah, I know. I've heard of it.
Yeah, and computer was starting to become a thing, right? And when I graduated, believe it or not, I graduated with an engineering degree.
Cool.
I got hired by a company. It was my first work was with a company called New Logic. They're owned by Sony, and they were trying to invent color monitors, not color TV, color monitors for the computer.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And this is around 91, 92, around that time period. Because the computers, the Tanny computers, the ColecoVisions, and all that stuff, we rely on a TV, right?
Yeah.
Now they're building monitors, but monitors back then were all monochromatic, you know, green and gray.
Well, like
right?
the Commodore 64, you just like plugged it into a television, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was the time at the time, right? And that's how I got into it. Eventually I got bored with that company because working as a engineer at the time was you had to wear the white shirt and the tie. Even though I'm working with soldering irons and stuff, you still got to wear the tie, right? You got the badge. It was the typical like the IBM look
Yeah, yeah.
today. Yeah, I quit that. I found a small company called DPS. Okay, so this is gonna lead to something. They built these cards that went into this computer called the Amiga computer. And the Amiga computer was the first computer graphic machine. And they were building it with this company called NewTek. And this company was designing a piece of software called Lightwave 3D, right? And it was like a 3D application software. And I got involved with that because I didn't know at the time they were developing for a company that was doing Babylon 5.
Oh, cool.
So I got into the project and I was like, I start learning and doing stuff with the digital crew for Babylon 5, right? I think it was called Digital Domain at the time, or Rhythm and Hues at the time. And that's how I got into eventually what happens is because I was working with them so much, they said, move up to LA, right? I lived on a producer's couch, like couch surf, for about 6 months before I found a place, right? Eventually, I landed in Costa Mesa, the Orange County area, and I ended up living there around 95 till 2005. And I worked in the visual effects. I literally worked in that area because what happened was when I was working on Babylon 5 stuff was I was the technical advisor. I was helping them build boards and stuff. Somebody, a second unit director saw my sketchbook, right? And they said, oh, shoot, you can draw, right? And said, do you know anything about the storyboards? And I said, I have no idea what a storyboard is. Well, teach you, right? So that's how I got into visual effects was because of that.
Okay, neat.
I had the technical know-how on how to build because we were trying to figure out things like green screen. We're trying to do 3D renderings and shadings and lightings. And I was helping the engineers at the time because I had the creative background. I had to deal with the artists too. And we're trying to figure out stuff. Right.
And this is during the infancy of that 3D rendering.
This is around 95, yeah, 96 and stuff like that. By the time I finished with a lot of the project, I ended up working for the effects house. I ended up doing things like, it wasn't like title. It was like more like we were the art department, right? We were doing visual effects, storyboards, all sorts of stuff, right? And I ended up working on a bunch of projects, and I ended up like literally learning how to paint on glass for matte extensions and working with 3D softwares and stuff. Ended up working with Adobe of all things, then Mattel, then these toy companies, then this company called Vendy. And they started developing this product for Microsoft, and Microsoft brought in a Xbox at the time, right? Yeah, and I got into the game development and all sorts of stuff, right? Yeah, it was interesting because that's how I got into the art side. That's how I know how to draw.
You know what's interesting though is you went for one job, and like the skills you picked up drawing as a and just you continued doing sketchbooks. Fun. It got you this job basically, right?
Yeah.
Awesome.
It just kept rolling, and that's how I landed these gigs with like Upper Deck and all this stuff because I was kind of like the design guy for some of these companies for certain their stuff, either as consultant, the technical, or doing what they call pitches. So if, for example, Matt, like if you had an idea for a toy line, right? Like for example. And you pitch the story to me, and I'd be okay. Well, you hire me on as your lead designer or artist, and I would come up with all the concepts, the toy design, the the environment, the characters, and all that stuff. And we'd work with a toy designer and how to do the molds and stuff. And we'd pitch that to Mattel or MGA Games, or right, because back in the day, you have to remember around in the 90s, all the animations were based around toys.
Oh yeah, yeah. Like
Right?
Saturday morning cartoons, they had to sell toys.
That's right.
Yeah.
So that's how I got involved with things like Upper Deck and all these other companies, you know, Mattel and stuff like that. Because one of the projects I got, it was really funny, was I was single and I was like 24 or something like that. And my sister just gave birth to her first son, which is my nephew, right? And I'm so proud. And Mattel hires me on as the Hot Wheel line, right?
All
It's like,
right.
this is awesome, right? I'm gonna be drawing Hot Wheels and blah blah blah, right? So I'm drawing away Hot Wheels. They're sending me toys and little tracks and stuff like that. I'm doing like the flash animation on their websites, and they're like, you know, Locke, we really don't like the way you draw Hot Wheels. I'm like, what? I thought it was cool. And I was like, you know,
Oh no.
right? We're gonna throw you in with Barbie. I'm like, what the hell, right? And you know, at the time, I was like, there's no way. There's no way. I had to learn like the Barbie proportions and stuff like that. And I kind of
Yeah.
fell right into it. And they're like, yeah, I was doing storyboard concept for the Mattel line, like the Barbie lines and stuff. And that was because the art director saw something that I didn't see.
Yeah. Well, sometimes
Right?
it takes someone seeing something we don't see in ourselves.
Yeah.
You know, I guess so. Yeah. So, but I guess it worked out though, right?
It worked out. It worked out. That's how I landed a lot of the gigs, right? It was like it wasn't called concept art at the time. It was like, there wasn't a title like you're a concept artist. You were just the artist. You're the freelance artist, or
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
the art department back in the days, right? And we do everything. We worked on all sorts of film projects, commercials, print production. So I wasn't afraid to get, because I was single. It didn't matter. I worked all these
Yeah.
weird hours, right? And that's how I got into it. Eventually, the product that I helped build for the Babylon 5, then it became Star Trek, TNG, and all the stuff that you see. You know, the early 90s spaceships,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
3D spaceships on.
Oh, so like
Right?
you're talking about the toy line, like
No, just anything
oh, okay.
in the 90s that had to do with spaceships and 3D rendering.
Yeah,
that
yeah,
was,
yeah.
you know what I mean? At the time, remember it was that boom where the commercials had these really funky 3Ds
Oh, yeah.
that, you know, they were, at the time, they were just, you know, top of the line. Now you look back, you're like,
Yeah, wow, yikes.
yeah, exactly, right? And I was there at the very beginning, and eventually our production house won an Emmy, right?
Oh, that's great.
So yeah, I have a trophy sitting there,
Wow.
all covered in dust, right, from the Academy for that product, for that design, right? So that's how I got into it. Then, you know, all that was just me doing art, and that was because my parents says no.
So
And
like, yeah, one door closes, another one opens. Like,
well,
so,
they kind of, all of it kind of like, I think because of the passion, and I drew a lot and all that stuff, it kind of led me to that, right? Because I didn't know there was this thing out in LA. There was this art stuff, right? But that's how I got into it, and you know, eventually things like you know, the sketch cards that you've seen me do for Tops, Upper Deck, and all that stuff was because
Yeah.
I had an in with Upper Deck. Upper Deck says, you know, do you want to do some sketch card? And I said, what are sketch cards? Right? And said, well, do original paintings on these little cards. And I said, okay, well, send them to me. So I started doing those, right? And that's how I became part of that. But before that, it was like, when I got out of the industry, I still love comics, right?
yeah.
I moved back to Toronto around 2005, right? And I was looking for film production work, right, in Toronto. And because it was such a small niche community,
Yeah.
right? It was really tough to find that work. So I went back to what I knew was just all the engineering stuff. I started working for TV stations, and that also led to the effects house and all the other stuff too, right? And I kind of left that area, but I still gravitated to comics because on the weekends I'd go to Comic Cons. I would do these cons. Then I would run into indie creators, and they're always like, "Oh, we like the way you do your work, and could you do us a cover?" And I said, "Sure," right? So I ended up doing variant covers, right, from all the stuff you see in the back, right? I started doing covers. I started doing. I didn't know there was such these big, huge, like part of the industry at the time.
Yeah.
So I was painting them. I was doing whatever I can, especially indie creators, right? Because back then I wasn't charging anybody anything. I was asking in turn, like, I'll do you a cover if you want to give me like 5-10 books so I can put on my table to sell,
Yeah.
right? And that's how I was doing a lot of the covers. Then these retailers notice and they start asking Marvel and DC, hey, can we get this guy to do some special like retail variant for us, right? So I started doing all these retail variants for them, right? And they were just like, that's how I got into a lot of where I am today, right? Then the sketch cover came along, right, in 2014, 13, around there.
Yeah. When they started making the blank ones you could do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I started getting into those, right? And they were a lot of fun at the time. And they were selling like crazy back in the days. Now,
Yeah.
due to the market, they sell a lot less, right? So many hardcore collectors are into that market.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
hopefully that answered it. Like after half an hour, I guess.
Hey, we got a question from Jeff here. He's like, "What was your first D&D character, class, race?"
I was a wizard, and I sucked at it.
We weren't allowed to play that, like, because my aunt told my mom it was all devil worshippers and stuff.
That's
so
right.
We weren't allowed to play like Dungeons
Right?
and Dragons.
My
So that was
second favorite was the elf, right? It was just that's how I got into it. So let me see. The thing that got me into it was I'm gonna move this camera up right up there. That painting right up on the wall there.
Yeah.
Okay. That is 40 by 30 something painting. Right? So that is a pen and ink. So back in the day, there was this company called Kitchen Sink Press. They built the game book, right? And that painting is done by Dan Day, right? I did not know that back in the day because I saw it in the D&D book. And that's how I got into it because he drew these cutaways with traps and dragon bones and stuff like so it would be like a spread in the book, right? So that is your map, right? I mean, there's a map section, but that was your, he drew those little decorations, right? And the little drawings with skulls and bones and right on the corner and all that stuff. Well, I was at a maybe almost 10 years ago, 10, 15 years ago, I was at a convention and I saw that sitting next to me. And I'm going, that looks familiar, right? And there was this old guy, like literally sitting next to me trying to sell this stuff. And I go, did you paint that? He goes, yeah. And I go, did you paint that for a company called Kitchen Sink Press? Well, he goes, yeah, I did that, or blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, I ended up talking with him. And he literally gave that to me, right? And we're friends to this day. And I didn't know Dan did he did Batman. He did all this.
That's amazing. That's awesome.
Right?
Yeah, I like some of that Kitchen Sink Press stuff. They did a book called Xenozoic Tales. They used to have a bunch of that stuff.
Yeah.
Kind of like the dinosaurs. And I know that Will Eisner was reprinting his old Spirit.
That's the Spirit books and stuff.
Yeah, they were fun. I wish I don't know. I get sad some days. I wish like companies like them and Eclipse Comics were still around.
They, those were they were back then. They were indie books left and right, right? Now there's publishers still out there. It's just that it's harder to the market either has gotten like larger, or you know what I mean, like a lot of it is now on Kickstarter, right? That's
Yeah.
that's the new thing. Kitchen Sink Press was one of those things where LCS back then was far and in between until the 90s, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I didn't know what the LCS was until I
Yeah,
was a teenager.
yeah. And that was the 90s when LCS started popping because of Image Comics, right? Jim
Yeah.
Lee, you know, those guys. They were the one who brought all the variant covers. They did all this other stuff.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it would have been like the only way I found Kitchen Sink Press was by a comic book company called Comic Book, an LCS in Toronto, and they only deal in rare, like not rare, in indie stuff, and it was hard for
Yeah.
them to find. Right?
Yeah.
These were I don't know how they did it, but they found these little shops, and they will have 2 or 3 books on the shelf, right? You know, those are the things. I have no idea, from EC Comics to all these rare like indie stuff. That's where I learned, like, you know, what's his name, the guy that is Grump or whatever. You know, those indie underground, like almost pornographic, like 60s
Oh yeah.
zines.
Like there's like the stuff, like some of those books were only in head shops.
Exactly.
Like they sold bonds. Like I'll give you a good example. Hold on. It won't take but a second. Razor's got
Thanks,
a comment
Christine.
there for you.
Out of his game.
Stuff like that. Yeah, you have to buy that stuff in a.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
it's
Those.
like Von Baudet
Yeah,
and or like Fat Freddy's cat.
that's right. I remember those. Like, I did not know that that whole thing existed, right? And
Yeah.
that was my thing, was like, oh my god. Then I discovered Heavy Metal magazine, right?
Oh yeah.
Right? Was it Epic magazine or Eclipse or whatever?
Epic, and they had a Harris Publishing, or there was Warren Magazine.
Yeah.
Did like Creepy and Vampirella and
A
Eerie
whole
and all that.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I think a lot of those died out, like you said, the Kickstarter
Yeah.
and stuff like that. People are indie. Well, I don't know. That's a great time, but do you think now is maybe a better time for independent creators because you can make your own thing, or is it a dangerous time?
It's I don't know. I mean, I think back then for us, it was that discovery of walk into the LCS, finding that book, and finding another book that you would not have noticed anywhere whatsoever. Now with Kickstarter and GoFundMe and all these Fund My Comics and all this other stuff, is I don't know what it is. Some of it was a hit or miss.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And there is a lot more. Like, the indie market is a lot bigger now due to the internet, right? But sometimes more is like almost anybody can get into it.
Yeah, if you just have to figure out how to get it somewhere to print it and just get the money to print it.
Yeah.
And like figure it out. I mean, I see like how-to videos.
Yeah.
On YouTube about how I've been interested in, like, I did have an idea for a story because I do a little writing, but my mom's the artist, but my cousin's kind of an artist, and I was like, we could do something, but I'm like, I don't know if I want to do it because there's so much out there. And another thing I know as a collector you have to watch out for on Kickstarter, and I'm not going to name any names, but some of them were waiting 2 years and they still haven't got a book.
Yeah. Like, you know, I got stung a lot when Kickstarter started because of that. Like, after a while, I learned that I have to, like, uphill too, backwards.
Both ways. It was both ways uphill. Okay, get it right, Ray.
That's right. Both hills backwards in the snow, barefoot too. And we liked it back then.
Yeah.
The what do you call it? The, like, it's a lot to filter out. There's back then, I think the filtering process was my LCS, right?
Yeah.
Now I feel like we are the filter, right? But because I'm a lot older, I have that experience, I guess, to look for the story I like and stuff. Back then, I rely on my LCS to curtail
Yeah.
that for me. He knew or she knew, the store owner would know what kind of story they like and that I would like, right?
And it helps you kind of curate what you would want to
Yeah, now I'm
get check out.
responsible for my own self, but I feel that the younger readers going in don't have that. They kind of like, if you back a story that you think it's good, you saw the art may be crap, the story might, the plot might be good, then you get it and you read it and it's like crap, right? You're kind of discouraged from the next one, right? With an LCS, what they brought in, they're like, well, if you like this, you're gonna, because he or she already
Yeah.
let's call it, yeah, filtered it, what's the term, like already did the work, the legwork for you,
Yeah.
kind of,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? They did the filtering, they did all the other stuff. I think that was, and also at the back then was, um for those who were doing indie books, they were the zines, the ash cans at the time too, right? They just wrote
Yeah.
and did whatever, right? The 50s, 60s kind of stuff. Um, Nowadays, you got the webtoons, you got all the other stuff. I think there's a lot more at our fingertip, but sometimes we need to have somebody like, that's why I kind of still like my LCS, right? I'll support them because they kind of curate some of the stuff for me,
Mhm.
right? I'm kind of lazy that way, or like, I don't know what like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, what do you think of the audience? Like you know what I mean?
Well, I
Like,
mean, I think I've seen like what I think it can be intimidating for like newer readers
yeah,
to come in is the fact that like they reboot all the series so much. They're like, well, where do I start off at? Do I have to wait till it? Can I really start picking up on issue 37?
yeah,
And start reading, or like, and also the single issue collectors are kind of, I don't know. That seems like the older people do that because
yeah,
um, you could, if what some people just, I heard people say all the time, like, I'm just going to wait and get the graphic, the trade paperback when it comes out, because everybody knows there's going to be a trade paperback. But
yeah,
back in the day, you weren't guaranteed that unless you were waiting on like a Marvel Masterworks or an omnibus to come out, and that was cost like $150. So
yeah.
yeah, the
It
trade
was,
paperback. I think with the a lot of the young people, it's manga. It's not DC or Marvel. It's manga.
that's right. My daughter's the same. I try to get her into the comics. It's not her thing. She's into manga. She's into the webtoon. She's into the stuff. I even got her the Japanese version of like Batman and all this other stuff. Not interested, right? Not interested, right? And that's the thing, because for them, even when we walked into the LCS, it's like, okay, do you like this? But I'm looking at it, I was like, wait, how come there's like 6 titles for X-Men or 7 titles for X-Men? How do I get her involved, right? You know what I mean? Like, that's the thing, right? I mean, I can rely on Detective Comics, right? It's at like 1,000 something, or
Yeah.
all this other stuff. I can get her into that, but she's not into Batman. She's not into, right? I grew up with Batman at whatever issue it was, at 300 or whatever, right? At the time.
Yeah.
But I kind of fell into these, Batman Year One, and
Oh yeah, I love Batman Year One.
and the Killing Joke, and all this other stuff, right?
I got the hardcover back there on my shelf. The
Yeah, see,
Killing
right?
Joke.
Was it? Yeah, like you kind of picked it up, but nowadays, it's kind of like I want to get back into Spider-Man, but I don't know if I trust it, Where do I
I
start?
don't. I'm gonna be honest with you. The two best Spider-Man books are not even like one of them's not normal continuity. It's Ultimate Spider-Man,
Yeah,
and I believe all the kids in like younger generation, their Spider-Man's Miles Morales,
that's right.
and it's really kind of interesting because I grew up. Me and you both know we grew up on Peter Parker,
Exactly.
but I have grown to love like my Miles though. I think
Right.
he's because he kind of represents what Peter Parker used to represent.
Yeah.
You know, I just noticed too, looking at the background that our names in the back. Yours is like I have the wrong size, but anyway, it don't matter. I'm not a graphic designer, so yeah. Like well, Jeff says, there's like you walk into your local Barnes and Noble.
Yeah.
There's 2 to 3 bookshelves for comic, graphic novels, trade paperbacks, and there's 8 to 10 shelves for manga and hentai. Yeah,
That's right. Because the manga stuff it is very curated in volume 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Right.
yeah,
My daughter can come in, pick up volume 1, and she could just follow the entire thing if she wanted to. Right.
absolutely, yeah.
Right. If she literally sits in the Barnes and Noble and read the first issue of volume 1. Right. For her, if she likes that series, she'll pick up 2, 3, 4, 5 out the door. Right. And that's the thing. If I walk into an LCS, I see this omnibus, right? Which omnibus is it? Is it Web of Spider-Man?
Is it
Spectacular.
volume 1? Is it volume 2?
Yeah.
Yeah, is it
Peter, was it Peter Parker Spider-Man? I remember that. Amazing Spider-Man. You know what I mean? The Mighty Thor, right? Like you get all these titles, right? And I
yeah,
don't blame them. I don't really blame them, right? I mean, they want to come in. They go, oh, it's Spider-Man, volume 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, you got Marvel Masterpiece or whatever. You know what I mean? Spider-Man,
Masterworks,
Captain
yeah.
America, Bicentennial Man, all this other stuff.
And you have the DC Absolute editions, and
Yeah.
Razor was talking about the DC Compact editions they have now.
Yeah, I have those. Those are my, like, I don't want to crack open my what do you call it? Yeah, let me grab them. I'll show you. I mean,
Yeah. Well, you don't want to pick up like I'm not going to grab like my Batman 404 and start reading it, like because I'm trying to keep it in good condition.
Razor, pick this up. American Vampire. You'll probably like that. Right? This is this is great DC compact. Watchmen for me, it's kind of like what do you call that one where shoot, you always pick up the book no matter what.
Yeah.
That movie where they remade it with Denzel Washington and whatever.
Oh yeah, I know what you mean. Well, like Alan Moore is one of my favorite writers. I have so his Saga of the Swamp Thing.
Yeah, so I got Hush. Like, I had to pick this up because of the Superman movie.
Yeah, you know what? I was watching a video about this series on Comic Tropes last weekend.
Oh yeah?
And he was talking about how, and I agreed with him. It's like, because I remember reading it, it reminds you of the way Superman's supposed to be. Like in your mind, when I think of Superman,
Yep.
And Grant Morrison did a great job, and Frank Quitely. I know,
Yep.
I mean, some people, I know it's the art's not for everybody, but I just love his depiction of Superman in this series.
The one I love the most that I always gravitate back to was Man of Steel by
Oh yeah, John Byrne.
John Burns. I love that.
Here, I'll show you. I'm actually going to be doing a series here in tribute to the movie coming out. Let me switch. Let me check. I'll trade place with you real quick, Locke.
Yeah. Exactly. That is my favorite series.
And that, well, they had two, that's like one of the first variant covers too.
Yeah.
Because,
Look at that. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
they had
forgot
the
about that. Yeah.
And like it's like the one where he teams up with Batman.
Yeah.
And I just this was like when I was a kid. This was it for me. I just like this is Superman. I love John Byrne's take on the character. And so it's all Man of Steel, and then like All Star Superman for me,
Yeah,
and then the death of Superman because you got Superman's
that's right.
selflessness. You know, like he's, you know, what's Razor saying? The American Vampire only $9.99 right now on Amazon. Just bought
Yeah.
it. Thanks, Locke. I'll let you know how. All right.
It's a
American
great
Vampire is
series.
that was it Scott Snyder?
I believe it is.
Because I had a copy of #1. I sold it, I think, for like $5.
Scott Snyder. Yeah.
Yep, Scott Snyder.
Yeah. See, this is, I mean, I remember reading this when it was the single floppy stuff. And then I love kind of like 19. So it takes place in the Prohibition era, you know, the gangster,
Yeah.
right? But it's really, really good. It's really,
I
really
wonder
good.
if the Ryan Coogler, who did the movie Sinners, was inspired by that because it's Prohibition era too.
Exactly. That's what, you know what, that could be it too, right?
But like
Then,
what I was going to do with this though, like what I was saying, and I'm sorry,
oh no,
to
no,
interrupt,
no, no, go ahead.
is that I'm thinking about like doing a review of this again and like talking about it because of
You should.
the Superman movie coming out. So
I think that'd be great. You got to go through it. I mean, just the opening alone on Krypton is my
yeah.
favorite, right?
And then
Just
John Byrne started over with they rebooted the Superman Volume 2,
that's right.
and I got to actually talk to Dan Jurgens, and he signed my Death of Superman issue in another issue, and he was just like, I said, is it true that you just blurted out, let's just kill him?
Yeah.
He said, well, he said it's not exactly what I said. He said it was. He said, but you know what I'm saying. Everybody, it's kind of the legend now.
Yeah,
So I just go along with it.
that's right.
But he was a nice guy. Okay, I got a question for you. It's getting kind of, and we'll take a couple of questions from the audience. Well, I can sound like I'm Conan O'Brien. We'll take some questions from the audience. All right. Anyway, would you like to tell us is there any projects you can tell us about you're working on?
I
know some you can't
think
say
I'm
nothing
allowed
about,
to.
you know.
Yeah. Currently I am working on a IDW cover. And they gave me the option of a bunch of Ninja Turtle ones. One of those was Casey Jones, and it was issue 1 of Casey Jones, and I was like, I need to do Ninja Turtles. But I also asked them, like, at the same time, I talked to a lot of my artist friends, and they go, you should do something where, like, it's not really done much. And one of those things that came up was, I'm into horror, right? So one of the cover was going to be Tim Burton's Sleepy Hollow, right? So, and the other one was 30 Days of Nights. There was a movie with Josh something where
Josh Hartnett.
Yeah, I love that movie.
That's a great movie. It's
a great vampire movie.
Yeah.
You guys, definitely see it. 30 Days of Nights, right? Not the second one, the first one.
The first one. Exactly.
Yeah, the first one, right? It's about like what happens to these people who lived in the North Pole, and instead of being daylight all the time, like near the North Pole, where you got 30 days of just total darkness.
It would be like a paradise for vampires.
And and what happens if a group of vampires showed up, right? And it's really well done. I love that movie, right? So that was another cover, and I'm going like, well, I was talking to a couple friends, and they said, you know what, it's a great movie, but is there going to be enough people going to collect it, right? So that was one of the two, and the other one was, I'm a big Tim Burton fan, right? Batman with Michael Keaton, right? Like the first 2 movie, right? Or something with Danny DeVito and
oh yeah,
Paul
absolutely.
Pfeiffer, remember?
Edward Scissorhands, he did that movie.
And, those things. And
Ed Wood,
so,
yeah.
Yep. So I said, you know what? I'm gonna do. I want to do Sleepy Hollow. So right now, what I'm doing is I send in a bunch of thumbnails, and they pick 3. and I'm down to 3, and I got to give them a little bit more detail. So I have till the 25th of this month to submit a little bit more detailed 3 covers concept for them. Then they'll pick 1 out of the 3. Then from that 1, I will now go and create the cover. So I have a month to create the cover, right? So by August the 25th, I believe, is when the cover needs to be done by. Then release is, was it August? I think release is October 30th for Sleepy Hollow, right? And if I do really well with the first cover, I might get all 4 covers. Which
That's
like
awesome.
I would love to get. You know what I mean?
Would you, let me know when it comes out. I'd like to get order one.
I will get a handful for myself.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just let me know when like FOC is, because I'll
yeah,
buy it.
I gotta find out what's gonna happen with that. That might just end up being a retail variant. That I
Okay.
hope not, right? If the cover does really well, it might become like a variant cover for them or something like that, right? So let's see what happens, and that's the project I'm working on. But other than that, I mean, most of the other projects are all cards for tops and upper
And
deck.
there is Locke's Instagram. It's
Yeah.
Mad Monkey Love, and it's in the description too as well of this stream.
Thanks, Razor.
Well,
Right?
okay. Well, I'm excited to see that coming out. I know there's some stuff you can't talk about, but
Yeah.
you're welcome anytime to come on and promote anything when it's coming out.
Yeah,
So
thanks.
I really appreciate you coming on. But before we go, I'll see if anybody's got any questions real quick. We'll try to keep it brief because I don't want to keep him all night. I'm sure he's got some stuff to draw or places
I
to
do.
go. Yeah. So if you got any, like real quick, I only got about 9 people, but don't try to ask too many questions. Just if you have a question,
Right.
Razor's like, yeah, he does. He's got to work on my stuff. Under the cowl of MS, it says, what was your first published item? Did you send in some art or comment that got put in a comic when you were
In the contest? Yeah. As a kid, I literally I was into reading Savage Sword, and I literally submitted a lot of pages that I kind of drew on comic backboards and Bristol board that I found that I
Yeah.
learned that was like 11 by 17 kind of thing. I kind of drew everything out by hand. I literally photocopied these stuff, mailed it in, and got rejection letters, right? And I wish I had those rejection letters to this day, because I think I would love to have them framed, because I was like 15, 16 at the time, right? So like things like I got published was in like fan arts and stuff. Like I found some of the do I have it here? Bits and pieces that I use. Here we go. That's the bottom.
Hold on.
I was
Let
like
me,
15, 16 at the time
oh, neat.
when Predator was a thing,
Yeah, yeah.
right? That got published in, I forget what magazine or whatever the stuff was. Then I did a bunch of other comics, and they were, again, published by Kitchen Sink Press. It was called Jade Tiger. I don't know how many issue they had of that. And it was about kind of like, it was like a superhero back in the 50s who went into cryogenic and woke up in 2020. Yeah. Toronto time, where there was flying cars, right? 2020,
Yeah.
right? Flying cars.
Never thought we were going to have flying cars in about 2020, right?
In 2020, right?
Everything bars.
and that's how I that was like kind of like my first kind of like
Okay,
I did
nice.
these I did these. I did a bunch of other ones like Alien something with a bunch of stuff, and they were all for like these gameplay books. Like the TSR. You know, those
Yeah, yeah,
were.
yeah.
I remember getting like $10 up, like for an image, and that was a lot of money.
You felt like you puff your chest out a little bit. Yeah, I got
Exactly. And
paid
it's
to do it.
published, right?
Yeah, yeah. We got
Yeah.
a question from Adamantium Blade Comic Collectibles. Drawing book you recommend for beginning comic artists?
Believe it or not, the Nauman, Comic Book Worm, and I are going through the art of what do you call it? The draw comic the Marvel way,
Yeah,
right? So every Sunday, if you want, jump in. I have other books, other stuff that I want to recommend. Things like I've learned over the years. There's this Wally Wood. It's called 22 Panels That Always Work. I don't know if I can get it in focus, right? Like this is one of those things I've learned. There's another one called Sequential Art by one of my favorite artists is Eisner, Will Eisner. He does.
oh yeah,
He's fantastic.
he's
Yeah,
unmatched. I'm sorry, he's like the GOAT to me.
he is. He is. This is where I learned a lot of the lights and the shadows and
Yeah.
stuff. Right. The other thing, I mean, I wish Ty Templeton published a book, but I did literally a comic book boot camp with him, right? For about a good month, going through doing story beats, using lights and shadows, because Ty Templeton was responsible for a lot of the Batman the Animated Series, right? He did books like Moon Knight and a bunch of other stuff, right? He's got a very cartoony Batman the Animated Series style because that's where he came from, right? But I did a comic book boot camp kind of stuff. But now you can, if you want any of that stuff, you can find a lot of them online. But good books are always like Learn Your Anatomy, right? Like if you're gonna draw comic books, and if you want to be that good, you got to know your anatomy. You have to be able to do 360s, character sheets, all this other stuff, right? The best thing to learn is pick up things like the animated survival book for animators, survival guide. It's one of those guides where it was done by Disney's and Disney artists, where they show you animated sequence, how to do animation, stretch, and stuff. But they really apply to a lot of storyboarding and all the other stuff too. So yeah, there's a lot of this stuff you can pick up. But yeah, that's I'll give you more later.
We got one. I guess we can fill one more question. Jean Malot wants to know what your favorite character is to draw.
Favorite character to draw. That I. Favorite character to draw.
Or if you can't decide on one, just characters. That's why.
Well, the thing is, I could draw Venom like blindfolded, right? Because everybody wants Venom. I could draw Wolverine like blindfolded. I can draw.
Everybody likes Venom and Ghost Rider when I was a kid. Like the 90s, right? They're like, draw me Ghost Rider. They like that. So I guess it's about boys in the flaming skulls, and
When I'm drawing, I'm always learning. I'm always trying different techniques, right? I fell in love with Frank Miller back in the 90s when he did those negative spaces. Then I saw Mike Mignola, Hellboy, and I fell in love with that, right?
Then Hellboy, and there's a Bram Stoker's Dracula comic book he did.
Oh, that is
it is amazing. Yes,
it is. It is very, very amazing. There is like a bunch of them. I'm into collecting art books, right? I'll pick up one or two comic books here and there. Like for example, I love the art style of Distillery. Those books.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You seen that?
Those.
Yeah. Like any indie books that has a unique art style, I gravitate towards. Right. Very dark, very gritty, kind of. Some of it is kind of like Wayshack style, You seen that? You know, I think
Yeah,
he
yeah.
does that monster, like Bill Sienkiewicz kind of style, right? I love anything that is a little off the beat, right? That's the kind of stuff. But I also gravitate back to the classic, uh, John Romani Jr., John Romani, like the old stuff, right? Like when I first grew up, I mean, when I saw Wonder Woman #1, the issue by George Perez, I loved his art style, right?
Yeah. As soon as you see it, it's amazing. And like,
Yeah,
there's a story. I watched this documentary they did for like a DVD or something for an Avengers cartoon. They were talking about the history of the Avengers series, and they were talking about George Perez's work.
yeah,
In the 70s and 80s, and then in the 90s of it. And he's like, they're like a lot of people when it came to team books, George Perez was saying they don't want to do it. There's like too many characters to draw.
yeah,
He says, and he says, I was the more the better. He said, I would draw as many characters on a cover as I could. I don't care.
yeah.
He's
And,
really
and that
enjoying
was his
it.
detail. That was his thing.
Yeah.
That was his thing, right? And then I saw what you call Neil Adam, right?
Yeah.
How realistic some of the characters were, right? I mean, like all the artists are my favorite, right? It's just depending on the year, the type, This year is kind of like Mark Spears' unique color palette.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you run into that, right? Certain stuff I'm okay with, right? But anything I'll try to emulate, and like Kingdom Come, Alex Ross. I
Yeah.
fell in love with that, right? That the way he painted Superman. I've never seen, you know what I mean? The
Yeah.
square
And it's
jaw.
older Superman. Yeah. He looks like he come out of Central Casting, like he's carved out of granite.
Exactly, right? And Wonder Woman was older, wiser, you know what I mean? Like, and Lex, oh my God.
Yeah. That's the way Lex Luthor. That's the way I always picture him. Is like
Right.
that. We had one more question, but like we kind of already didn't we spend 30 minutes kind of talking about this?
Yeah.
If you want to,
We got-
watch the replay, Missy Mart. I'm sorry, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's a long answer. Just put it that
It's
way.
a
We had
long
to-
answer.
Yeah.
It's a
Well,
long
he
one.
came. You had a journey to get to where you're at now, didn't you?
Yeah. And a lot
I
of
guess
it was, like real short summary was immigrant parents not wanting your kids to, in the early 80s, that art was not something you want to get into, right? Especially you're from a war-torn country like Vietnam, right? You're a refugee in a new country, right? With nothing, right? So, yeah.
Yeah.
Long
Well,
journey.
our parents. Sometimes we don't agree what they do. They want the best for us. Like they're
That's
worried.
right.
They were just worried that like, oh, he's gonna regret this.
It was the
day,
sign of the time.
Yeah, it was a sign of the times.
It was the time.
Nowadays, you got a lot more. Like it's different. My mom and them would have been like that too, though, probably. So
Yeah. I mean, back then you worked for a company. You worked for that company until you retired. They took care of you.
yeah, and then they give you a gold watch.
Yeah, right. Now
Yeah.
there's no such thing, right? If the third quarter doesn't make the money, you're on the chopping block, right? That's it.
Yeah.
Well.
All right, sorry, Missy Morris, but I'm glad you showed up. Well, guys, before we go, I'm gonna tell you guys what I got going on tomorrow. Tomorrow's Wednesday. Oh, tomorrow at 9:00 I have a Whatnot sale at 9 p.m. Eastern. So if you guys want some good comic books at a low price, I got them. Then Thursday at 12:30 p.m. Good Cinema presents our review of The Dark Knight.
Oh,
That should be fun, and that's at 12:30 p.m. Eastern time. And then the Comic Clowns will be later that night at 7:00. And then, of course, on Sunday, the Sunday Super Show Extravaganza at 6 p.m.
yeah.
All right. And then for Bad Cinema on Monday, we got a movie that's going to live up to the name Bad Cinema on Monday at 12:30.
Oh yeah.
Job
Oh, come on. That's not
Revenge.
bad. The Revenge?
Yeah.
Was that 3D? No.
Shark
3D?
has a memory, and it follows
That's
them to
right.
the Caribbean.
You got to go through piranhas. I love
And
that.
George has said, he goes, I'm still waiting for Locke to draw me butt naked.
That's right.
Naked. You've been in Virginia
We're gonna
too
do
long.
the Titanic
Georgia.
thing.
Naked.
Naked.
Thank you for showing up, Missy Mar. I really appreciate everybody coming out, and I really appreciate my guest Locke for agreeing to come on. I know he's a busy man, but he's a gracious man, and I think he's a great person to have in our comic book community here. And I can't wait to see what you do in the future. If there's anything else you want to say before we go, you have the floor.
Yeah, nothing much, man. Everybody take care of yourself. I know tough time is going to come ahead and all the other stuff, but you want to get some good books, hit up Matt on his Whatnot show for tomorrow, right?
Thanks, Locke.
There you go, right? If a lot of it is, if you guys want to reach, my commission list is closed at the moment. I have multiple projects on the run. Then if I don't respond to my Instagrams and all that stuff, that is because I'm hunkering down and deadlines are due. That's what happens. It's not that I'm ignoring you. Actually, I am ignoring you. but I have contracts I got to fill out, and that's what I need to do first. And I'll get to you on time like that. But yeah, thanks a lot, guys.
All right. Well, guys, we've come to the end of our journey for the night. But until next time, true believers, as old Uncle Stan would say, Excelsior.
Come, son of Jarrell! Kneel before Zod! Snoochie boochies.